All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here on your Wednesday evening. For those that don't know me, my name's Claire. I'm the DC Campaigns Manager at the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. We're one of the organizations that is involved in leading the Stop Project Pipes campaign, which is a campaign that's working to stop a natural gas project in the city, and broadly, we're working to move the city off of methane. And you're going to hear a lot more about why we're doing that and what that means tonight. For the first part of our Washington Gas Exposed series, tonight is focused on how heating your home is creating the climate crisis. Um, so, like I said, I'm Claire from CCAN, and I am joined by folks from a couple other organizations that helped put together this awesome series. So I'll pass it over to Deirdre to introduce yourself.
Unmute. I'm Deirdre Joy, and I'm a member of Third Act, the Washington, D.C. working group, and I know a number of you who have joined, and welcome.
All
Karen?
right. Yeah, so I'm here with Deirdre and Karen Gladding, and we are the co-liaisons for the Clean Energy Campaign for Third Act here in DC. And we're very happy to be collaborating with CCAN and the League of Women Voters tonight to bring you some really important information about methane gas in our home district. Thanks. Over to you, Paula.
Hey, I'm Paula Hershoff, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of the District of Columbia. And mostly we focus on voting rights, but we have a climate team, and so that's who I'm representing tonight. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start off our presentation. This one is on the relationship between Washington Gas, you heating your home, and the climate crisis. So I thought I'd just pull way back and start with the climate crisis. So here, not a crisis, the sun heats the earth next. Claire, yeah, thank you. And that some of that heat is then radiated back into the atmosphere. Still not a problem. There are gases in the atmosphere. We refer to them as greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide that will radiate some of that heat back down to the earth, heating it. And the issue is that these gases, these greenhouse gases, have been increasing in volume in the atmosphere, largely due to man-made processes. Okay, next. Thank you. So I'm going to really be focusing on methane. There are other greenhouse gases, but methane is a very powerful, very potent greenhouse gas. Now, compared to CO2, which can hang around in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 or more years, methane actually will break down in only 10 to 12 years. So that's the good news. But because it's so potent, it's so powerful at absorbing and re-radiating that heat energy back to the earth. It's actually 28 times more powerful than CO2 if you look over like 100 years. And as a result, methane is alone responsible for about a third of the global warming. Next. Thank you. So now where does methane come from, the methane in the atmosphere? There are a lot of different sources, and they're all represented by these arrows pointing up. I've circled one source because this is what we're really going to be focusing on tonight. That's fossil fuel production and use. But actually, agriculture, you've probably heard about burping cows. They produce quite a bit of methane, as does food waste. There are natural sources of methane as well, burning biofuels. Water areas like wetlands or rice fields can also produce a fair amount of methane. My favorite natural source is termites, but they actually are only responsible for about 1 to 2% of the methane that ends up in the atmosphere. So you have all this methane going up in the atmosphere on the sort of the left-hand side of the slide. And then you also have methane being pulled out of the atmosphere, primarily through chemical reactions. And if those arrows, the up and down arrows, were about the same, that would be okay. But actually, this is for 2020. The amount of methane going, if you add all those up arrows up, the amount of methane going into the atmosphere is in fact greater than the amount being pulled out. And as a result, next, Claire, thank you. The amount of methane in the atmosphere is increasing. So this is just a graph of some data collected by NOAA. They used a global network of air sampling going back to about 1980. They tracked the amount of methane, so that's parts per billion, in the atmosphere. You can see this black squiggly line is essentially mostly going up, except in the 2000s where it kind of plateaus briefly. It's a squiggly line because the amount of methane in the atmosphere varies by season. So, but in general, it's going up. Next. So NOAA also measured further back, all the way back to the year 1010 by taking ice cores. So if you dig down deep into the ice, you're essentially going back in time. And by looking at the composition of the ice, they could make assumptions about the composition of the atmosphere at that time. So that's represented by that orange line. And you can see for most of the time it was measured, it's pretty flat. It doesn't change that much. You get to around the year 1800, 1850, Industrial Revolution, that line starts to go up, and all up to the present day, that little black squiggle at the end is actually what you're looking at on the left-hand side. So quite a impressive increase in the amount of methane being measured in the atmosphere in recent times. Okay, next, thank you. So the point I really want to make here, we talk about natural gas. I'm not going to talk about natural gas after this slide. I'm going to talk about methane gas, because if you look at the composition, the chemical composition of natural gas, 97% of it is methane. There's a few other small hydrocarbons in there, but essentially natural gas is methane gas. Natural gas is obviously a very convenient name for it if for the fossil fuel industry, but it really doesn't. It's a bit of a misnomer, and so the issue with methane gas is there are problems when you burn it, to be sure. But the other problem with methane gas is that it leaks from the infrastructure that's used to drill it, to transport it. This is just a small little schematic of methane gas traveling from, say, a fracking site all the way to your home. Travels in pipelines, it goes to processing plants, compressor stations, gas-fired power plants. All along the way, there are leaks. And this is methane entering the atmosphere. Next, please. Thank you. So just this is a fracking rig. And so I guess about 2008, the technology for fracking changed, and the amount of fracking we ended up doing in this country really increased quite a bit and is still at a very high level. Now, the EPA measures the amount of methane in the atmosphere that is being released by fossil fuel infrastructure. And they call it this inventory. And so we have a number. Back in 2024, so not that long ago, a very comprehensive study, not done by the EPA, of the amount of methane around fossil fuel infrastructure was done. And they found that the amount of methane in the atmosphere was actually 2 to 3 times higher than what the EPA was estimating. So we know it leaks, and we know that the amount of leakage is probably higher than what we've been measuring up to this point. Next slide. So this is just a couple of pictures of methane gas infrastructure, pipelines, liquid natural gas export terminals. These are not nice places to live around, in part because of the methane leaks, but because there are also lots of other toxic chemicals being released, particularly by the processing plants and the export terminals. These are flares, I'll just mention. They're supposed to burn the methane gas so it doesn't escape into the atmosphere, but they've also been found to be not entirely efficient. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, this is just another study to point out in 2025, finding the very same thing, that EPA was underestimating the amount of leakage. So yeah, here I just want to point out that methane gas pipelines, certainly methane leaks are a problem, but there are other problems with these pipelines as well. This is the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which runs through West Virginia and Virginia. And there's a lot of environmental degradation that can occur along the path of a pipeline. This pipeline in particular goes through some very pristine ecosystems. There are endangered species in some of the streams that were threatened by the pipeline. So there are other issues in addition to the methane gas that make this a very not a wonderful industry, I'll just say. So next slide. Thank you. Yeah, and these communities, I'll just mention, in Southwest Virginia and in West Virginia, fought the Mountain Valley Pipeline for decades. And unfortunately, the pipeline did go into service about a year ago, but not without. And the reason they fought it was because their land was damaged, the ecosystems, and the danger of actually living next to an operating pipeline. Next slide. So one last point I want to make, something else the fossil fuel industry will sometimes say about methane gas. They'll call it a bridge fuel. And the rationale here is that methane gas emits about half the CO2 that coal does. But it's really kind of beside the point because, as we already know, natural gas is methane. And methane, in and of itself, is a very potent greenhouse gas that leaks at every step of the way. So, really, a bridge to nowhere. Oh, sorry, next slide. So I'm going to end my part of the presentation on what I consider really some good news. So I already mentioned methane is short-lived and it's very powerful. So if you think about this, any action that we take, be it leak detection and mitigation, which is what, Washington Gas talks about and the industry talks about, or even better, replacing methane gas with renewable energy. Any action we take in that direction has potentially a relatively quick and dramatic impact on the climate. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening. And I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Karen, and she's going to talk about methane gas in our town, Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so thanks, Deirdre, for giving us kind of that big picture of methane gas and the science behind it. I would just like to say, if anyone has any questions about our presentation, we are planning to answer those at the close of the program. Feel free to put your questions in the chat so we can keep track of them. But we've set aside time at the end to answer those to the degree that we can. So from the big picture of methane gas that Deirdre just provided us, I'm going to zoom in a little bit now and talk about methane gas here in DC and what DC is planning to do about greenhouse gases and climate change here. Next. So first, just an overview. So the production of the methane gas that we have here in DC comes largely from the Marcellus shale fields of Pennsylvania, and that is extracted by fracking. So we are definitely supportive of the fracking industry with our consumption of methane gas. The transmission, the way it gets to us, is via large interstate pipelines. And of course, Deirdre just showed us a picture of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is one of those large interstate pipelines. And then finally, next, distribution here in the district is through Washington Gas's 1,200 miles of pipelines to serve about 165,000 customers. Next. So I thought this was a very interesting slide that comes from our very own Department of Energy and Environment and helps us to understand what sectors contribute to greenhouse gases here in our city. Note that these numbers are total emissions, not only methane gas. I do want to point that out. However, the burning of fossil fuels, whether methane, gasoline, or coal, are responsible for the large majority of emissions. Next. So most people think, as I did a year and a half ago, most people think of gasoline burned by our cars as the major contributor to greenhouse gases, but you can see here that it's actually buildings. Through furnaces, hot water heaters, stoves, other fossil fuel burning appliances, they are a far larger emitter of greenhouse gases than our vehicles. This means that our local building codes, rehabs, retrofits, appliance replacement are incredibly important in planning for our clean energy future. Next. So who is exactly consuming the methane gas here in DC? Next. So the commercial sector consumes nearly 60% of the methane. And in the commercial sector, we include government buildings. You might be interested in knowing that this is the largest percentage of methane consumption in the commercial sector in the country. The DC has the largest percentage of methane consumption by commercial sector. The residential use, 45% of us use gas, 49, a little more, almost 50% use electricity. But although electricity does have the edge over gas in homes, it's really important to understand that Pepco electricity, 34% is generated by methane. So even though it is clean electricity, it is nevertheless also burning a lot of methane gas. Our regional transmission organization, PJM, says that 34% comes from methane, and another 14% from coal. And then interesting to know that the portion of electricity produced by burning methane gas is climbing steadily. Despite the availability of alternate energy sources, methane is increasingly consumed to produce our electricity. So let's just pause for a moment here to let me emphasize that although our electric grid relies heavily on fossil fuels, electricity has very important advantages over burning methane gas directly in our homes. And the most important of these for now is that our electric grid, our electric infrastructure, is capable of distributing electricity generated by other sources, such as solar and wind. Our gas infrastructure, however, the pipes, is not able to distribute any other form of energy, at least at this time. And then just to point out, I think what you already know, that it's Washington Gas that delivers all of DC's methane gas. Next. Okay, so we are really quite fortunate to live in a place that, at least on paper, takes climate change really seriously, and where our Department of Energy and Environment has developed a detailed plan for how we can become carbon neutral by 2045. That is, if all agencies, officials, residents, businesses, developers, all parties are on board following the plan. Here are the goals of our carbon-free DC plan. And I just wanted to point out two that I think for tonight are particularly important. Next. That our homes and buildings are healthy and fossil fuel free. This is one of our district's goals for our carbon neutrality plan, and that our energy is clean, renewable, and resilient, particularly in the face of extreme weather. By the way, the carbon-free DC plan is very detailed, very interesting as well. If you, like most of us, are interested in clean energy, and maybe Isla's already put it in the chat, a link to the full plan. Thanks, Isla. Okay, next, please. So here's a timeline of key milestones in the carbon-free DC plan, and I would just like to highlight a couple of these for you. Next. 2035, only 10 years from now, no new fossil fuel heat or hot water systems installed. That's only 10 years from now. No new fossil fuel heat or hot water systems. That's a pretty ambitious goal, it seems to me. And we're going to need everyone to be on board with this, including Washington Gas. Next. By 2040, 90% of all homes and buildings are fully fossil fuel free. That's only 15 years away. And then finally, next, by 2045, we will have achieved, we hope, carbon neutrality and with climate resilient DC. So our path to carbon neutrality is well mapped out, thanks to DOEE and other DC authorities who supported and approved the plan. This is our official plan. You can find the full plan through the link that Isla has dropped into the chat. You can also Google carbon-free DC if you want to find out more. Carbon neutrality is achievable, but it will require constant effort and work, high commitment, and this is really important, holding all participants and players accountable. Already we've seen waivers granted to developers to exempt them from our clean energy requirements in retrofits. Now, this is very worrying. Okay, so finally, I just wanted to show you in this last slide how we're doing here in DC with our emissions. You can see that there is a steady decline in our greenhouse gases and emissions, with an uptick most recently in about, I'm thinking this is probably about 2020, 2022. I have not been able to determine what was responsible for that, but in general, we're on track, but we need to be vigilant. We need, as residents, to be holding all parties accountable for this plan and making sure that we can achieve this very important goal of carbon neutrality. So now I'm going to turn over our presentation to Paula Hershoff at the League of Women Voters to tell you how Washington Gas is derailing our district plans for a clean energy future. Over to you, Paula. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. So the previous presenters, we heard about the climate science of methane gas and our city's commitment to reducing methane and other greenhouse gas emissions. But I'm going to cover an aspect of gas usage that the Washington Gas Company would prefer to keep quiet: methane leakage. I'll also talk about Project Pipes, the company's multi-billion-dollar program to replace district pipelines. So the fact is that methane leaks everywhere along the line from the source to your home, starting at the gas wells, through the processing as it's vented and flared, everywhere, till we get the gas meters and inside our homes and businesses. And you probably know that gas stoves leak methane even in our kitchens when they're turned off. Next slide. In Washington, D.C., methane leaks are ubiquitous across our aging 1,200-mile pipeline system. So the slide shows typical sites in our city, pipeline repair, and a very corroded pipe. Some of our pipes are more than a century old. Of course, other eastern seaboard cities have leak-prone systems too, but DC's proportion of leak-prone pipes was the highest in the country in 2021 at 39%. A DC Department of Energy and Environment study in 2021 found a startling number of leaks, 3,346. Next slide. Researchers drove more than 700 miles of DC roads using a high-precision methane analyzer to identify the leaks and GPS to pinpoint locations. They drove each road twice to confirm the leaks. So the yellow shows the area they covered, overlaid with purple showing where they found leaks. And you might want to spot your neighborhood in general to see if methane leaks near your home or how bad they are. As you can see, the darker purple. And Washington Gas disputed those OEE Commission findings, I should note. So pressure is mounting for Washington Gas to pay more attention to these methane leaks. Our coalition of environmental, faith, and community groups called Beyond Gas has been advocating for leak repair that targets the worst leaks. Citizen scientists from member groups like the Sierra Club and Washington Interfaith Network tested air from vents on streets and sidewalks over a one-year period. With an industry-grade methane detector, they found more than 1,000 leaks in 2021, almost 1,000 in 2022, and more than a dozen of those hovered near the point of potential explosion. However, we don't really know the full extent of the leakage, in part because the district has two different reporting methodologies that are inconsistent or have discrepancies. On the one hand, the Public Service Commission, which regulates Washington Gas, requires quarterly detailed leak reporting called the Leak Identification, Detection, and Repair and Odor Complaints Report. But the information is not publicly available. Next slide. And on the other hand, a federal agency called the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration mandates annual reporting on leaks. And as you see on this slide, the number of hazardous leaks has been rising, and it's still rising after this graph while it goes on. More recent data from the gas company's own website shows that in 2023, the number of hazardous leaks on the main pipelines rose by nearly 100 over 2018. So there is just continuous increase here. Another source of mounting pressure for leak repair is the DC Office of the People's Counsel, which asked the Public Service Commission to examine the gas company's leak management operations in 2021, again in 2022, and also in 2024, when an investigation was initiated, which is now ongoing. In calling for this investigation, the People's Counsel cited reports of frequent leaks and delayed repairs. Methane leaks are a major long-term health concern, which you'll hear about in part 3 of this seminar on May 22nd. They're also a more immediate concern because, as we know, when methane builds up in a space without adequate ventilation, it can ignite and explode. Next slide. Methane gas leaks that occur inside a home or building, as well as those from ruptured gas lines, endanger and disrupt lives. In the slide, you see photos of a major fire caused by a ruptured gas line next door to a daycare center in Anacostia. It's called Baby Einstein. You can see the sign there. And also last year, a leaking gas stove caused an extensive fire at an apartment building on Columbia Road Northwest. Now, prompt action from our DC Fire Department limits the number of explosions. Fire department responds to hundreds of gas leak emergencies, costing taxpayers millions annually. DC firefighters responded to 944 emergency leaks in one recent year. So what does Project Pipes have to do with all this? Next slide. Washington Gas initiated Project Pipes in 2014 as an accelerated infrastructure program to replace aging pipes that might leak in the future. And the logo on the right is self-evident. We want to stop Project Pipes. Opposition to the program is based on the exorbitant costs for a program that doesn't even target the leaks. The costs are passed on to gas customers in surcharges on their gas bills. Many gas customers are households that can't afford to switch to electrical heating and cooking systems. Nearly half of DC households have gone electric, so fewer households remain to foot this bill. The finances of this project will be covered in detail in part 2 of the seminar on May 8th. Washington Gas justifies Project Pipes by claiming that pipe replacement means fewer leaks over the long term. But if DC is serious about meeting its climate commitments, that long term involves increasing reliance on clean sources of energy, not fossil fuels like methane gas. Next slide. Moreover, with or without Project Pipes, Washington Gas is mandated to maintain a safe gas distribution system. The company has a separate regular maintenance program for active leaks that was doing a better job at leak repair before they started Project Pipes. The Beyond Gas Coalition believes that targeted leak repair should take precedence over the wholesale and seemingly random pipe replacement of Project Pipes. So the Public Service Commission has put pressure on Washington Gas by rejecting Project Pipes Phase 3 as underperforming and not cost effective. The commission told Washington Gas to restructure its approach, to target the highest risk pipes, and to factor in the city's transition to electrification. However, the gas company simply rebranded Phase 3. They now call it District Safe, without making those requested changes. Additional pressure came from the City Council, which gives guidance to the Public Service Commission. 8 council members signed a letter last year strongly urging the commission to reject District Safe. Among their arguments was the disproportionate burden it places on low-income gas customers, as I mentioned earlier. The letter noted these customers already spend far more on energy than higher income residents do. And the letter warned that continued large-scale investment in pipe replacement is unreasonable for pipelines that may be abandoned as methane use declines and more households switch to clean energy. Why does Washington Gas not want to target leak repair? The company is an investor-owned corporation with primary loyalty to its shareholders, not to DC ratepayers. The corporate source of profits is new infrastructure assets, like pipe replacement. Washington Gas is owned by AltaGas, the enormous pipeline infrastructure corporation based in Canada. To conclude, despite the exorbitant payouts for its pipeline replacement, Washington Gas is not effectively addressing hazardous methane leaks in Washington, D.C. The company says that it will take more years of pipeline replacement to see a significant reduction in leaks. This business as usual attitude stands in the way of progress. Next slide. Our recourse is to raise our voices, to insist on healthier air, a safer city, and affordable heating bills. You can see that we're a very enthusiastic group. We should tell the Public Service Commission that we want to reduce methane leakage in our neighborhoods and to advance toward our goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. You can sign up to testify at commission hearings on Project Pipes and District Safe to be held in June and July. Together, our efforts can make a difference in decisions at the local level. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Paula and Karen and Deirdre. Yeah, so I hope that gave a good picture for the situation in DC and where we are at right now. And all of the folks involved in this work want to see this get better. So we're hoping that you all will be part of doing something about this methane crisis. So first, like Paula mentioned, there's upcoming community hearings happening on June 3rd and June 17th. The one on June 3rd will be at Anacostia Neighborhood Library, and the one on June 17th will be in downtown DC at the DC Public Service Commission. That one you can also call in online if you want to participate online. Basically, community hearings are an opportunity for the Public Service Commission that regulates Washington Gas to hear directly from DC residents and hear what we think should happen. They have called for these community hearings on this District Safe plan that Paula was talking a little bit about, which is their rebranded, although largely the same Project Pipes. So we're hoping that folks will come out to these community hearings and testify about wanting to see a clean energy future for the district and not more spending on fossil fuels. So if you're interested in coming to this, we're going to follow up with folks on this call tonight with more information about how to let us know that you want to come, and then we can follow up with you with talking points and background information to help you write your testimony. I'll be hosting like drop-in office hours where you can come and get questions answered, and we'll have lots more training and support so that you're ready to testify come June. The other thing that you can do to get ready to testify is come to the next two sessions of this Washington Gas Exposed series. So CCAN is going to continue partnering with other organizations around the district and cover different elements of Project Pipes and our methane gas system in the district. So on Thursday, May 8th, we're going to have another webinar where we're going to talk about how utilities like Washington Gas profit off of raising our bills and investing in things like Project Pipes. And then we're going to do a finale of our series in person over in Ward 8 on Thursday, May 22nd. We're going to serve dinner and talk about how gas in our homes makes us sick and why it's bad for our health. So if you want to attend these, you can RSVP in the same place you RSVP'd for the webinar tonight. We'll send over that Zoom link for the 8th and follow up with more information about getting to the location on the 22nd. But these would be a great opportunity to hear more about the other reasons why Project Pipes is a problem for our city and help prepare you for testifying. And then in addition to getting involved specifically around stopping Project Pipes, the organizations here tonight also have ways for you to just continue to be involved. CCAN's next DC Activist Meetup is on Thursday, May 15th. These are monthly meetings for activists that are working with CCAN to learn about all the different work that's going on and ask your questions. This one in May, I'm sure we're going to talk more about testifying against District Safe in the June community hearings. So that'll be a great place to come and get questions answered and also find out more about what the Chesapeake Climate Action Network is up to. And I'll pass it off to talk about Third Act.
Yeah, I'll just say briefly, if you're third act, should mention for those of you who don't know, we're a climate and democracy group of folks primarily over the age of 60, but we don't check ID. And if you're at all interested in maybe signing up with us, what happens then is you'll hear about our monthly all member meetings. You'll get our newsletter. We collaborate quite a bit with groups like CCAN and other environmental and democracy groups in town. And I'm just going to plug an event that's actually not happening until September, but Third Act, along with other environmental groups in DC and around the country, are all gearing up for a day that we're calling Sunday on September 21st, 2025. So coming up in a few months. This is really a all day, possibly all weekend series of actions celebrating the scale up of the opposite of methane gas, solar and clean energy solutions. So if you're at all interested in getting involved in that, you can reach out to me. My email address is here. So yeah, thank you. I don't know, Karen, if you have anything else.
No, we'll see you in the streets, democracy and climate. We'll see you out there and would love to be able to coordinate with you on various actions in both of those very important issues. Thanks.
Over to you, Paula.
This is how you can get involved with the League of Women Voters. So we have a very active climate team and we have a lot of fun together. So anyone who is interested in being a league member and working on climate at the same time, please contact me.
Great. We will also share all of this out in a follow-up email. So if you didn't get a chance to grab links, then you will get it in your email in the next couple of days as well. And that is what we have for you all tonight. And we have the rest of our time to answer any questions from you all. So if folks have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand, come off mute, whatever's easiest for you. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I
While people are gathering their thoughts, I would like to really highlight what Claire was saying about testimony in the upcoming community hearings. It is a rare opportunity to see our commissioners face to face and have them listen to us about our concerns around project pipes and clean energy in our city. And really important that people like you and me come. It seems very intimidating, the idea of testimony and hearings and such, but Claire and Isla do a fantastic job preparing people to give testimony, and it's only 3 to 5 minutes. So I would really just like to encourage all of you to reach out to her or to us at Third Act, Paula too, and to get involved. Looks like we have a question from Katie.
Yeah, thank you very much. All the presentations have just been great. I've really learned a lot. And I think one of the most maybe perhaps sobering was that how much of our electricity still depends on methane and coal. And then I was just wondering if anyone on this call is familiar with what is the state of play with the development of renewables, like greater utilization of solar. Because it would be good to have a sense of how strong or relatively strong that is in relation to all this impetus to, just continue to build out new pipes and continue to just use methane gas. Does anybody know?
I think part of the challenge right now that increase in the use of methane gas may be directly related to the problem of data centers. So, I mean, we produce a lot of methane gas, more than we can use in this country. And so the folks who are producing that gas are always looking for uses. So there's a lot of pressure in that direction. On the other hand, solar is more economical. It's cheaper. And that it really has that going for it. And as people learn more about using solar in their own homes and businesses, that realization that it's actually cheaper, it could win out. So, solar is increasing. I don't have the numbers. You guys at CCAN probably have that information, but it's not a done deal that methane's going to win this race by any stretch.
Yeah, I was
That
curious.
having been said, I would like to point out that Washington Gas has obligations to help develop alternative sources, clean alternative sources of energy, especially solar, and they have chosen to pay fines for not fulfilling that mandate as opposed to actually doing something about it. So another big thumbs down on Washington Gas.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious, at CCAN or League of Women Voters, do you have a sense of, what's happening in the solar arena? Because it just seems like there needs to be an equal amount, if not much more, focus on what are the alternatives, especially as Deirdre said, solar has the potential to be so much cheaper. So anyway, can anyone speak to that?
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I think so there's really great potential for solar development in our region. I think directly here in the district, since we're urban, the best opportunity for solar build out is more of a community solar model. So people, putting solar panels on their homes and things like that. To do big solar build out, what's called utility scale solar, things that, could actually fully replace the need for power plants powered by fossil fuels. You need a lot more space than we kind of have right here within the district. Um, but luckily, there is lots of space around our region. And so there's some great solar projects, kind of what's called in the queue, for building out solar in Maryland or in Virginia. And these are in PJM's queue. So Karen mentioned, PJM's our regional grid. And the problem is that using sort of um, what I will say my personal belief, using the excuse of data centers and that needing more electricity, PJM and fossil fuel developers are arguing, we should just put on a fossil fuel plant because that gives so much more capacity to our grid. Whereas, solar is sort of piecemeal and doesn't give as much capacity for the level of construction. But that's not entirely true, because solar is super powerful. So a lot of the issue around bringing more solar and other renewables onto the regional energy grid has to do with putting pressure on PJM to prioritize those projects over fossil fuel build out. That's something that the federal team at CCAN is working on a bit because it has to do with, coordination across all the different states that PJM is a part of. So I'm not the biggest expert on it, but we do some work on it, and a lot of it has to do with encouraging states and DC to prioritize solar build out, getting municipalities to approve utility scale solar, and then reject fossil fuel build out and basically just incentivize PJM to want to do solar even more. So it's super complicated. That is definitely true. But yeah, there's some folks working at CCAN on it, working on it at CCAN and lots of other places too. Yeah, Jeff.
Um, I'm a renter in an apartment building, but for many years now, I've been getting 100% wind energy electricity, which we haven't talked about this evening, but I don't know how I know that the wind comes from other parts of the region, and the electricity that actually comes into my apartment isn't actually wind energy, but there's some kind of a trade-off. Uh, and I don't know what the capacity is. I wonder if anyone here knows what the capacity is to build out wind, if because as a resident of DC, I have the option, and my wife and I have chosen the option of getting 100% wind energy.
Yeah, I'll just say wind energy is also a really great option. A lot of that comes from the offshore wind being built off of, Maryland and Virginia, which we're still seeing some good progress on offshore wind being built. But again, that also comes into sort of the federal government and state governments, and whether or not they will approve offshore wind build outs. So there definitely is, sort of technically speaking and ecologically speaking, lots of capacity to build out more wind. It's again a case of getting our governments on board with doing that. But that's stuff that CCAN also does work on in Maryland and Virginia, since we're a regional organization. And it certainly is an important priority too.
I'm wondering if anyone has any comments about Washington Gas project pipes. Maybe not questions so much as an opinion that they'd like to share or an insight.
It
Go ahead, Jeff.
it it seems clear that we we have the opportunity to mobilize our to educate and mobilize our neighbors and friends uh, to come testify and to find, I guess, speak with our council members. It's exciting to hear that most of our council members have already said they don't like project pipes, and it would probably be useful to shore them up, to thank them for taking their positions. Uh, Lobbyists say that thanking reps for taking good positions is very important in helping them to stay on board with that. But that's another thing that we can do.
Yeah, holding our officials accountable and thanking them where needed is really important work.
I guess, Claire, you and Isla will probably be continuing to keep us informed by email about opportunities to participate in various ways, whether it's testifying or lobbying or writing to whomever, and provide materials that we can share with our friends and neighbors.
Yeah. We're going to follow up from this call with the opportunity with a link so that you can let us know you're interested in testifying. And even if you're not so sure you want to do it, you can still say, I'm thinking about it. And then we'll know definitely to follow up directly. We'll write up, a guide for like, what does it even mean to testify? How does it work? Give you some facts about District Safe and talking points that you can bring up. Um, I think we'll also put together some advice on, talking to your friends, your neighbors, your folks at your church, folks in your community about this and testifying, and give you some talking points to see if you can, bring a friend along with you when you go testify. Um, and yeah, we'll be sure to keep you all updated. I did want to drop, um, since we were just talking about it. we do have a little tool if folks want to send a thank you note to the council members that opposed District Safe in the letter. And you can personalize it in here, of course. And it also will just show you which council members signed on in opposition if you're curious. But yeah, just totally want to reiterate, it's great to thank your council members and other officials when they do the right thing, since we tend to bother them when they're not.
I also wanted to point out that at least at the meeting on June 17th, you won't have to be physically present to give testimony. It will be a hybrid meeting, so you can testify remotely, and written testimony is always possible too. So there are no excuses.
Okay. Any more questions, thoughts?
Well, I know I will be at the hearing on the 3rd of June, and I will sign up to give testimony. So I guess I will sign off by saying I hope I'll see you there and that you will join me in that. And to feel free to reach out to any of us who presented tonight to get some support, some help, and to join us in this action against uh, committing our city to even greater and longer use of methane gas than is necessary through Project Pipes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for attending. It was really nice to see you here.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. We'll follow up with you with all the information and a recording in case you want to revisit anything we talked about tonight. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of your night, everyone.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Claire. Thanks, Sonia.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.